This is the Advertising Blueprint with Ryan Pancoke.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Ryan Pancoke with the Advertising Blueprint. This is advertising strategies for the small business owner. So today, in today's podcast, we are going to talk about budgets for your advertising. How much do you spend? Where should you put your money? How do you budget things? So that's what we're going to try to figure out today and go over. So hopefully we'll get through this and it won't be too bad. I know that talking numbers sometimes isn't always the funnest, but if you talk to any business owner, it is very important, right? I mean, it's one of the biggest things. So first thing is rule of thumb. They typically say that between 3 to 5% of your gross sales should go back into your advertising. So for instance, if you have $1 million in gross sales, you should be spending, let's just say at 4%, then that should be $40,000 a year should go back into your own advertising. So those are just easy numbers. You can figure out your own gross sales and figure out how much you should put back into your own advertising. So something else we want to go over is when to spend the money and how to budget things throughout the year. Now, there is a big argument on if you should advertise more when you're slow or more when you're busy. So I always tell people you should advertise the most when you're busy and the least when you're not. And typically when I meet with a lot of business owners, they'll tell me, Ryan, I'm so slow right now. I'm so slow. I need to advertise as much as I can because I'm so slow right now. And that's actually not what you're supposed to do. It's the exact opposite. So you should advertise the most when you're busy. So if you know there's a lot of people calling during these 3 months of the year, that's when you should advertise the most. And people who are going to argue that, who say, oh no, he's completely wrong, you should advertise when you're slow. I want to ask those same people who say that you should advertise when you're slow, when does a flower shop, when do they advertise the most? Valentine's Day? Mother's Day? Well, what about a water park? They advertise in the summertime. They're not advertising in the winter. I mean, think about a jewelry store. They're advertising the most during Valentine's Day week. What about all the other stores like Walmart and Target and some of the big box stores? When do they advertise the most? Is it during Christmas time? Because more people are spending money at that time? Is this making sense? So you want to make sure that your advertising budget is following your sales. So if your sales are steady throughout the whole entire year, if you're a dentist and you see the exact same amount of people throughout the whole calendar year, it's okay to have your budgets go 6,000, 6,000, 6,000, 6,000, 6,000 throughout the whole entire year because your sales are steady throughout the whole entire year. You might book out 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance. You might not have any holes. You're fine. You can spend the same amount of advertising throughout the whole year. Now, a lot of businesses are not like that. So you can actually match your advertising based on your gross sales. So for instance, if you have seasonal businesses where maybe, hey, you know what? During these 3 months out of the year, I make 15% of my gross sales. So in these 3 months is 45% of my sales. It's okay to put 45% of your advertising budget in those 3 months alone, right? So we want to make sure that everything matches up. So if you are seasonal and there's 3 to 6 months, it's okay to put all that money in those 3 to 6 months. If you kind of go up and down, you can actually follow your advertising budget going up and down the exact same way. It's the best way to do it. Now, something else that you want to do is you also want to make sure that you spend your money on different media groups. Now, the reason why you want to do that is because it's sort of like finances, where if you put all of your money in one basket and you say, I'm only going to buy this one stock, well, if that stock does great, then you're great. But if that one stock does terrible, well, now it's over. So what most people will do is they'll say, look, I want to buy a ton of stocks So that way, if one does bad, that's okay. I'm diversified. Now I can go into some of the other stocks, and if these do bad, these will do well. Well, now it evens out. Now I've got my steady growth. It's the same thing with your advertising. Is you shouldn't put all of your eggs in one TV station or one radio station, or we're going to do everything digital. The only time I think that's ever okay is if your advertising budget is so small, that's all you can afford. So if you're a brand new business and you're spending $500 a month in advertising or $1,000 a month in advertising, I'm telling you, it is okay to spend all of your money on one thing, whether that's online digital advertising with Facebook or with Google AdWords. Maybe that one thing is a magazine. Maybe that one thing is mailers. It's okay to do that. But for any other business that has a larger budget, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month, you should be putting your money in different places throughout the year. So if you look at some of the big box stores, and we're just going to talk about them because they know what they're doing. The people like your Walmarts, your Targets, like your Starbucks, your McDonald's, your Best Buys, your Chevys, your Toyotas, your big box places, your Fortune 500 companies. If you look at how they're spending their money and you look at their ratios, typically they're spending about anywhere between 70 to 90% of their money on broadcast TV advertising. And then with the other, anywhere between 10 to 30%, they are breaking it up into digital advertising, into very little radio advertising, maybe newspaper advertising if you're going after an older demographic, but they are mixing things up. So that's what you want to do based on your demographics, your target, who you're going on for that. Now, something else that I like to do with all of my clients with your budgets, it's you want to have sort of two separate accounts. So you're going to have a base account. For your base account, that's something you know that works. You know, because you've been doing it for years and years and years, whether that's TV, whether that's radio, whether that's digital. It could be some TV and some digital. That's your base advertising you do throughout the whole year. That's something that you know you're going to do. Then what I like to do with a lot of my clients is I like to have something called flexible advertising. With flexible advertising, what we're doing there is we're spending maybe 5% of their yearly budget, maybe 8 or 10% of their yearly budget on things that we're testing. So I acknowledge that the world is always changing. If you run your business like you did 10 years ago, things are not going to work out now in your favor because things are so much different than what they were 10 years ago. So I do believe that you should spend a little bit of your budget and try to test new things, whether that new thing is something new digitally. Maybe it's new mailers, maybe it's an interview, it could be a bunch of different things, but you should leave just a little flexible money on the side to try and test new things. Once you try and test those new things, if you do a good job tracking those things, you can then say, did this work? Is it something we should include with our base buy? Or did this not work? We should never do it again. But you should always have a little money set aside for your testing. So now the story that I want to go over today, something that we've seen is probably about 7 or 8 years ago, I signed a regional deal with American Standard where I would talk with, I'd probably go in boardrooms full of 60 to 80 heating and air people at a time. I'd probably put on a seminar maybe 3 to 5 times a year, and I would meet with all these different people who were all heating and air. And it was a regional deal, so it was all in probably 5 or 6 states. I would meet with people from small towns to huge cities. There were people that would have one-man crews, and there were people that had 20 people on a crew. And something common that I would see with a lot of these heating and air guys is they would say, hey, we've got a $5,000 budget throughout the whole entire year. We just spend that and then we're good. Well, what we did for a lot of them is we said, why are you spending the same amount of money in the springtime and the fall? We live in the Midwest, so in the spring and the fall is when it's nice around here. you're in your between 50s and 80s. It's beautiful. Why would you spend the same amount of money during those times of the year than you would in the winter and in the summer times, where the summer is extremely hot and the winter is extremely cold? We know for a fact, based on call volumes, we have more people calling in the summer and the winter. So what we did was we based their advertising based on their sales throughout the year. So in their summer months and their winter months, we would go up to maybe $10,000 a month. But then in their spring and their fall months, maybe we'd go down to $1,000 or $2,000. Following that strategy helped them grow because they knew during this time of the year, we get more sales. Let's hit them as hard as we can. We hit them. And then they got more phone calls in during their busy times, which actually shifted over to their slower times because they had a wait list. So those are some of the things we wanted to go over for our budgets. Thank you so much for tuning in this time with the Advertising Blueprint with Ryan Pancoke. Tune in next time and we'll go over some new stuff.